Thomas, how would you define what leadership is?
When I get this question, I always say like, hey, leadership starts with being able to lead yourself. And people say like, oh, well, that's the name of the question is in the response. For a while, our kids are on the boat with us and they're just doing what we're doing. But then eventually they start to go out further from home, further from the main base and explore the waters on their own. So I'm trying to tie this back into the question of what is not leadership. I think the better question is what is it that doesn't serve the environment? So if you throw an interception as a parent, you yell at your kids, you let something slide that shouldn't, whatever it is, that didn't work out well. It's not the interception that kills you then, it's ruminating on it. What's the replay that you have in your mind?
Welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Leader Podcast. Most men are taught how to provide, but very few are taught how to lead. Today's guest spent 15 years as an educator and a D1 strength coach, but his greatest challenge didn't happen on the field. It actually happened at his own dinner table. He's the founder of Dads Who Lead, a #1 best-selling author, and a man who turned his own struggle to connect with his teenager son into a movement that is saving families across the country. Please hope you're excited, because we are to have a man who helps fathers move from just being present to being powerful leaders. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you, man. Honor to be here. Excited to dive in.
And I was going to ask you this before we started, and I butcher people's last names all the time. The P is silent, correct?
Yeah, Pfanner.
Pfanner, right.
Oh yeah, I had my
99%.
My first MMA fight, I was announced as Thomas P. Pfanner. So it's all good. I'm used to it. So yeah, just Thomas Pfanner, and it's a cool last name. I appreciate because it's so uncommon. If I'm applying for a Venmo or whatever it is, I'm typically the only Thomas Pfanner, so it makes it easier to find me.
There we go. Awesome. Well, we're going to dive into a little bit about you and your story in a second. But before we do that, one of the things we love. Okay. So one of the things we like to dive into with our guests is how they would define leadership. In today's world, it's thrown around so often and could mean so many different things. But Thomas, how would you define what leadership is?
Leadership starts from within. So a big part of leadership, when I get this question, I always say hey, leadership starts with being able to lead yourself. And people say oh, well, that's the name of the question is in the response. So diving the next level deeper, is very important to be able to listen to the voice of God and to block out the noise from the outside world and be able to discern what are your gifts, how can you be grounded in who you are and own your strengths, own your beliefs, and be convicted in that. And I think we can see it very quickly as leaders when someone is attempting to influence someone else, but they're not grounded in who they are. They're not focused on improving their own game. It doesn't always sit well because it's this push and pull of trying to influence others without starting at the core of who you are. So to me, leadership really starts with being able to guide yourself and listen to the voice of God and be convicted in what you believe.
Yeah, I really like that. A thought came to mind I've actually never asked anyone, and so I'm curious to ask you this too. What isn't leadership? What to you, maybe the world do you see as sometimes described as leadership, but really isn't, or I've heard some people argue that, there's good and bad leadership. And then some people say, well, no, there's just leadership and there's things that aren't. But yeah, what would be the opposite, or what would be in your mind things that sometimes people think is leadership, but isn't?
There's two things that are really important as men that we need to identify, and it really depends on the personality type. So the first personality type, and this is actually getting into this, I didn't plan this, but I have a leadership quiz, and you can go in and kind of figure out what your natural leadership style is if you go to dadswholead.com. But there's I call it the admiral archetype. And an admiral is like, well, my dad. My dad was in the Air Force. Is like, this is what we're doing. This is the plan. This is how we're going to do it. We're going. Let's go. This is what I need to have be done. And typically, those people have a lot of experience. They have a lot of knowledge. They have been through the ropes and they know what needs to happen to make success happen. They know the exact steps and they need other people to execute them. So, in a lot of leadership roles, that's really effective. Now, in the context of leading our families, is extremely different because you're not guiding somebody to in the same direction. You're not guiding somebody. Like for example, when I was coaching at the University of Oregon, everybody's focusing on getting the players ready to perform at their best level possible on Saturday. That's one goal. Nutrition, physical therapy, strength coaches, position coaches, the janitor, everybody is trying to get the ready. Like the ship's moving in the same direction. And that's how it is for a lot of businesses. Family is the complete opposite because you have this young person that's becoming their own leader of themselves. So as opposed to them being on our boat and we're all working in the same direction, we're actually guiding them to be on a completely different track and steering their own ship. So I use that analogy of the two ships. Like for a while, our kids are on the boat with us and they're just doing what we're doing. But then eventually they start to go out further from home, further from the main base, and explore the waters on their own. So I'm trying to like tie this back into the question of what is not leadership. So that can serve. I think the better question is like, what is it that doesn't serve the environment?
Yeah.
So if you have that personality type, which that was my personality type, that's what caused my son to rebel because he didn't want to get told what to do. He didn't want to get put into a box. He wanted to do his own thing and be his own person. So that can be a detriment if you're so focused on getting the task done that we lose sight of the development. So just the word that's coming to mind is like ramrodding, domination, like this is what has to happen, let's go. And it has to happen now. If that's your default personality and you haven't developed the other side of understanding your son or daughter's journey, that can be dangerous, right? The other side of it, in the church hides behind this term of like servant leadership, men who have like surrendered their leadership to their wives. And that looks like often at the end of the game, I'm doing everything my wife's asking me to do. I don't understand why she's not happy. And then the reason is men are doing what their wives are telling them to do, but they're not doing it because it's coming from their heart. They're doing it because they're just being told to do what to do. They're just naturally a follower. And so there's no security in that. They're just playing a role character and they've surrendered the skill of listening to their own convictions of what they believe is best for their family. And they say like, well, you see this in like sitcoms like Home Improvement or The Simpsons, where like anytime the dad gets left in charge, the house just flips upside down. And it's like, oh, well, man, if we trust dad, nothing's going to turn out right. And if we trust mom, everything's going to turn out great. Everybody's going to have their cookies for the game and everybody's going to get to their stuff on time. And dad takes the reins and everything falls apart. So it can be dangerous as if we adopt this archetype. And that's why I don't like to watch a lot of those shows on TV. And we got to be mindful of what's happened over time is the show that's been on the television has been a mirror that's reflected back into the home of America. And we have a lot of men that don't have the skill set to lead their home well. So to answer your question, there's two sides of it. We've got to be able to connect well with our wives, with our kids, and we've also got to be able to lead well. And so what we do to work with the families is like, hey, how can you do both of those really effectively so that people are on track, people are independent, and people are like connected and vibing well. And not feeling like, oh man, here comes dad again. Here comes the police officer telling me
Yeah.
what to do, what I haven't done. Because that can be really exhausting if you've experienced a leader like that. So it's not domination. It's not just doing whatever somebody says. It's finding your own base of what you believe and taking that action first. Like Gandhi says, like be the change you want to see in the world. That type of energy is what I believe is like the most important. So I guess the opposite, if I use that analogy of poor leadership in the home, would be someone who does not embody the change or characteristics that they find important for their home to be successful.
Yeah. No, really good. A lot of good stuff there. And we'll dive back into some of that in a second, Thomas. But I want to, yeah. Could you share a little bit of your story? Like you went from the coach, the fighter, to now you've founded an organization, Dads Who Lead. You've written a book. Obviously, your story and your experience has been a big part of that. But share that with our listener. What happened? What happened at the dinner table? What happened with your son? Like what happened that like led to this movement and mission that you're on?
Yeah. So I guess I'll just start like my ikigai is to help men and women become men and women. Or like help them be. I'm kind of evolving it now to tighten it up. Of like help them be led by God so they could be the hero of their own story.
Could
Um,
could you reference what ikigai is for the person who may
yeah.
not
So
may not?
ikigai is kind of like your core purpose of like why God's chosen for you to be on the earth. And so and I didn't even know it was an ikigai at the time. I was like 19 or 20. I was like, all right, this is what's most important for me. Like this
Yeah.
is I actually took a class at Western Oregon where you like it really like peeled back all the layers and like why is it that you want to do that? Why is it? And then just kept going down. So like at the core, my undergrad was in exercise science. So I was going to be a strength coach. That was the plan. That was the dream from when I was like in high school, was to be a high school or college strength conditioning coach. And so I moved up. I had like three or four awesome internships with Western Oregon University, University of Oregon, another private facility. And so that part of my resume was developing the way that I wanted it to. And as I got out of college and I got my master's in teaching, my son Charles was like grade school. So it's like, all right, well, I'm kind of limited because he was born when I was 18, and I was not with his mom. Like not a situation that was going to be a long term. We were dating in high school, so that was if you have high schoolers or you can remember back to days, your motivations for a relationship, specifically my motivations for the relationship, were a lot different than now with
Mhm.
my wife, right? So, um, I'm through college, about 24, 25 years old. I'm married to my wife at this point. Charles is entering kindergarten, and I apply for jobs locally, and the one that I pick up is a full-time PE position in middle school in Eugene. So I was like, all right, well, it's local. It's the one that it's close by to my son. Like all those things are great. So it wasn't the strength conditioning position at high school that I had planned, but like I can move on and do that later was kind of my thought process. So you guys are getting a little bit of the longer version, but I think it's important for this audience because you're really asking about the depth of my story and how it got to here. So this draw like helped develop young men and women came to a head when in seventh when my son was in seventh grade, his mom, which we had 50-50 custody, moved across state. So if you're a dad and you're listening to this, that's not really something that's kosher to have a son or a daughter, a child or children where they're in a location where they have both their parents and one parent moves, by default, you're removing them from either yourself or the other parent when you decide to make this move. So when she moved, Charles was like, I don't want to move with you. I want to stay here with dad. Okay. That was fine. Like he was going to stay with us. So fast forward, after about 9 months, I had been coaching his football team. He was I got to help him get work. He was passing all his classes in school. It was January of 2022, and I try to call Charles after I got done coaching wrestling, and he doesn't pick up. And I call my parents because the plan was that he was going to go over there after school, and he doesn't. They haven't seen him. They haven't heard from him. I start calling around different like friends' parents. Nobody heard from him. So if you've ever not been able to get a hold of your child, 5 minutes feels like 5 hours. So finally, I think it was around 8 o'clock. So a couple hours later, I get a call, and it's Charles. It's not his normal number. And he says, Dad, I'm tired of you. I'm tired of being controlled and told what to do. I'm moving in with Mom across state. Peace out. End of call. So here it was. I invested 14 years into my son, and he's basically saying, like, I'm done with you. I'm walking out. And it wasn't because I didn't love him. It's not because I didn't put in effort. It was because he was not responding to my leadership the way that I needed him to, or the way that would serve him and would serve our family. And so I had to go through this ego death that night, sitting in his empty bedroom. I couldn't call his counselor. I couldn't talk to his teachers about like trying to change his mind. Charles was not interested in talking to me. The only person left to change was me. So in that time, I really had to reflect on how I could improve my leadership style so that I could be somebody that Charles could lean into as he was getting ready to go into high school. And there was urgency that was placed on that because that second half of his 8th grade year, so January to June, he was getting suspended, smoking weed, failing all his classes, like not going well. Like that, he would not be passing. He was like, if you know about, because from working in the school, like freshman year is incredibly important. Like if a kid fails multiple classes his freshman year, it's very hard to recover from that pattern and get caught up. If you fail your junior year, like, all right, like you've got most of your stuff done, we can kind of catch you up. So I knew if I didn't find a way to reach him, it was very likely by the time we got to Christmas, he could be a high school dropout addicted to drugs. So I had to figure out what I needed to do to shift to bring him back into my life. And it was during that time that like I got a coach, I got closer to God. I was able to see in my leadership style, I don't even call it parenting anymore, I just call it my leadership, what I was doing that was causing him to rebel against my leader. And it's not that it was bad, but the way that it was being received wasn't effective. And so we go through court, fast forward, they say, hey, Charles, yes, correct. Charles doesn't want to do anything to do with his dad. And also correct, Charles is not attending school. He's not passing his classes. Things aren't going well without dad. So they say, if you move to Redmond across state, you can have 50-50 custody and be with Charles. So we had a decision, like we can stay in Eugene, coach like a really nice teaching position, coaching PE, which is like a lot of teachers' dream because it is the easiest one. There's no grading. There's grading, but it's not like you're not grading papers.
Right. Not grading papers and tests.
Yeah. So I know this is a monologue. I hope it's all right. I'm going a little long on it.
No, this is good.
So we could stay there, stay in comfort, stay with the, my wife had a good job there as well as a nurse. Now, granted, she's a nurse, so that's an advantage. She could go anywhere. But for me, got to the point where it was like, okay, I know that I can always get more money, or I can teach, or I can figure out a way to make it work. And so we made the jump and we left our home. Like my parents lived in Eugene too, so there was a lot of like stability within that space that we walked away from. And when we moved out here, we didn't know for sure if Charles was gonna like really buy in to the plan and coming over to our house. And so when he did get here, he smelled like weed. It wasn't. It was good that we were around, and he was like passing his classes. He was doing that. He was passing his classes, but we'd have to tell him like, dude, take off your jacket around our daughters. So this time, like we had the 6-month-old and the 3-month-old. Those kids are now 6 and 3 respectively, but like I told him, I was like, hey, and this was really like the big pivoting shift. They're like, hey, I don't think you need like rehab. And at first I kind of asked him, like, what is it you're getting out of weed? So I could understand where he was coming from. But we got to do something to take care of your health. Like, make sure you're taking care of your body. And so he chose Muay Thai. And so I train jiu-jitsu. There's a Muay Thai class at the jiu-jitsu gym that I train at. And so we started going to do that together every Tuesday and Thursday night, both on the weeks where I had Charles, which was every other week, and then on the weeks that I didn't have Charles, I'd still go over and pick him up and drive out there. So I was getting like even like extra bonus time with him. And going through that process was really profound for Charlie. Like by the end of his freshman year, he was training. He like signed up for wrestling. He was training 3 times a day, and he dropped weed because he figured out that if he was high and just eating a bunch of McDonald's, training didn't go as well. And so like it's a little more fun when I'm not on junk. And then it turned into like, all right, well, the days that I'm not going to be the days that I'm training, I'm not going to smoke weed. And that turned into more and more days of not smoking weed until he dropped it. In his sophomore year, he was a letterman in wrestling at the high school. So he just like had a huge shift. And so I love sharing this story because it's just like, even no matter how far your kids feel like they've fallen, there's always a way to reconnect to pull them into a positive space. And like Charles' situation is tough with having split households with very different philosophies. And like if he can do it and rise up, like every dad can always elevate. I can still elevate my skill of leadership as well.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing all those details. I've got 2 questions that I think will go together.
Yeah.
And one will lead into the next. So one of them's selfish, one of them's for me.
Yeah.
So I've got a daughter who's 12. I've got about to turn 12, a son who's about to turn 10. We've got 4 kids. The rest are younger, but
Okay.
I can see with my daughter, like she's getting to that age where like I just shared this with someone recently, like my wife caught her eye rolling and mocking dad one day in the car. And I'm like, man, my sweet little girl's like getting an attitude now. And she's great. Like she's a good kid for sure. But like, what is the things, like, if you could go back that you would tell yourself, man, I wish, and maybe there's nothing, like, I know at the end of the day, kids can still make decisions and they still have a choice on how they respond and react. But is there anything you would have told yourself, hey, you talked about like an ego you had to drop and let go of, like, what were things that, hey, I wish I had started doing this with Charles sooner? And then the second question, for the dad who's maybe going through that right now and they don't have Mai Tai in their area, like what do you recommend to the father that's in the middle of that?
Okay. So first question, and then you might have to rehash the question because I'll just
That's
drop
okay.
it. About specifically your daughter's 12, eye rolling, like starting to have the personality and attitude.
My boy's 10. Yeah. What are things I can do if before it gets to that point,
Yeah.
to,
Well, one thing I will say that I did well is that I was always involved with Charles, whether I was like coaching football and I didn't say always, but like at least in that season, I had something that I would really like focus and do with him. So like the more of those things that you can do, the stronger bond that you can have and going into the season. The other thing that came to mind, the eye roll, especially with girls, is like women are very emotional. They're a storm. They're going to be ups and downs. And it's really easy for us as men to get mad at the storm. Like, well, why are you so upset about this? But that's the nature of how women are. So one of the things I tell folks is like, don't be mad at the storm. Don't be mad that your kids are rolling their eyes. Like it's expected. It's like the wind is blowing. It's going to happen, right? Now, it doesn't mean that it's acceptable, or it doesn't mean that you're not able to make an impact of like empowering her to be aware of if she's gonna, if her teacher or her coach says to do something and she rolls her eyes, and then it turns into like it turns into a 19-year-old who's rolling their eyes when they're asked to, go do whatever at the restaurant they're working at. Then it's like, okay, this person's not a good culture fit. We're gonna move on. So there is validity in being aware of like, okay, this is something that happened, like just being an observation that the wind is blowing, but don't allow yourself as the dad, as the leader, to have that storm emotionally, excuse my language, but like fuck with you. All right. Like that's okay. Like, all right, you rolled your eyes. We're gonna like continue on the course of what I believe is important to build a connection and develop you. If I were to go back and say, like, when Charles was 12, what could I have done? 13, 14, what could I have done? I could have been a much better listener. And I really wasn't aware of the rebellion cycle and understanding like why people rebel. And I have a podcast that goes into this. I can talk about it a little bit, but specifically people rebel because they feel like they're getting pushed into a box. And like I've had a client whose daughter, he grounded his daughter, right? And then what happens when she gets grounded for hanging out with her boyfriend? She sneaks out with her boyfriend at night. So it's like you push the box smaller, then she just like every action has equal or opposite reaction, right? So reframing it like, all right, how can I help my daughter grow? How can I help her develop? And surrendering to it. So like, hey, okay, I'm going to help my son learn how to play football. That's something we both enjoy to do it together. It's not forced. We can work on that. Like he likes skateboarding too. I'm not super hot on skateboarding. Well, he's not as much into it now, but when he was a middle schooler, he loved it. But like, I'm going to support it, but it's not like my jam. I'm not going to like pull it away from him. How can I become a part of his journey in a way, or in your case, your daughter's journey, so that you really understand the ins and outs of what's happening with her, what's happening with her friend group. You have common adventures. Like, do you and her have activities that you enjoy doing together?
Ooh, you're putting me on the spot. Looking for more of those. I will say that.
You got to get those, man. That's super important, because what can happen is if you have, and I'm not saying this is you, but just imagine the scenario.
Right. Yeah.
The kid at the gym. Just picture the kid at the gym, and his mom or his dad brings him in, and he sits in the corner and he does his iPad. And every day for an hour, he's on his iPad and mom and dad are working out. Okay. So what can be dangerous with this is, as opposed to maybe inviting the kid into the workout, just as an example, to develop the skills. Now they can do push-ups. Now they can start a campfire. Now they can go fishing. Now they can Now, by the time your daughter becomes 14, for example, I had a client who, like, I really want to be able to hunt with my daughter. Okay, she's 7 right now. She's not able to go. Like, okay, but what else do you need to be able to do to hunt? Okay, start a fire, pitch a tent, do like all these skills, right? So what you help them do is like figure out a plan. Like, all right, well, if I want to be able to hunt with my daughter when she's old enough, whatever that age is, but let's just say it's 13, she needs to be good at these skills so that she's actually going to enjoy it. Because if she doesn't know how to be outside, she doesn't have any of those skills, the skill development, she's not going to want to do that. So that's the danger of putting the kids behind the screen, is because they're not
Right.
developing hands-on skills. And that's like, as men, that's how we connect with people. We connect with people like you're doing with your group, in person, going through challenges together side by side. So I would like, and when you do that, well, you listen well and you go on adventures. Just those two things alone, that puts you on a very like small list for your daughter. Where like, if you remember back when like T-Mobile started as like the Fab Five, who you talk to the most, you're one of
Oh,
the
yeah.
Fab Five with your dad, right? My dad's one of my Fab Five. You may not be able to influence every decision, but like in her heart, she knows what dad really wants. And so that's ultimately, if we have that great relationship, they're going to be the hero of their own story. They're going to have to make their decision, but we put them in the best position possible for success by doing that.
Yeah. No, I
No,
love that, because it's like kids are, I think that like 11, 12, 14, like that area, like they're starting to just develop their own identity in a lot of ways. And yeah, we had an experience with our daughter, even just, this was a few months ago, where she just seemed unhappy, and brought her in the room, and I asked her, like, is everything okay? And she just burst into tears about little drama at school, and it wasn't a big deal. And we talked her through it. And I'm like, man, I had no idea. Like, I'm glad I asked. I'm glad I just said, hey, are
Yeah.
you okay? Yeah.
Well, and that's
No,
something,
that's,
thinking back to my parents. Like, my parents didn't spend a bunch of time talking to me about like, hey, you doing all right? Like, how are things? Like, I was like, oh, Thomas is great. Like, he does his homework on his own. He gets himself home from school. Like, we don't have to worry about him. But like, it's really good that you locked in to seeing what was happening in her heart.
yeah. Well, and maybe more importantly, let's go back to that second question. What do you tell the dad who's like, my son won't listen, or daughter, son or daughter won't listen. They don't want me in their life. I'm struggling to connect with them. I'm struggling to get them to talk to me. Yeah. What do you,
Yes. Okay. So
how did
number
you,
one,
how do you overcome that?
okay, selfish plug. Like, one, if you can go pick up my book, Dads Who Lead, that will give you a great launching pad.
Pick it up.
And yeah. And then I don't know when this podcast is coming out. I'm doing a 4-week training. It's going to be like for your audience, man, like, and your community. Like, we'll get like a discount code in the show notes, so you guys can get
Cool.
in it for free. It's called the Leadership Forge. It's gonna be like 4 weeks, kind of going through the curriculum that I go through in the book.
When will that start?
February 16th.
This will be out before then. Cool.
Okay. Amazing. So, but like, okay, let's say you're like, I don't want to buy the book. I don't want to do his class. That seems like too much work if you're that guy. All right. What I would say, if you're just listening to this and looking for a starting point, and it really is the starting point of a journey. It starts with faith in yourself as a dad, that you are you are your parent, your kid's father on purpose. You were chosen to go through these challenges that you're going through, and you're chosen to move your son or daughter through the challenges that they're going through. You were hand chosen by God to do that. So you have to have faith in God that you're there on purpose, and faith in your own abilities as a dad. Now, faith in your abilities as a dad doesn't mean that you have everything figured out. Just go and play.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, I can figure out what I need to do, or what I need to learn, or what I need to change. I'm capable. It's within my capacity to be able to perform at a higher level to be able to do this. So that's super important. And then like the last piece of faith is you have to have faith in your kids that they have what it takes. If you've ever had a leader who has not had faith in you, it's tremendously demoralizing. Like, you're not even able to show up at half of the quality that you could be, is if you had somebody who like believed in you. So having that belief in yourself, belief in God, and belief in your family, like those, like, let's start from that space, and then we can go into some of the other levels. But that's a good place to start.
No, I really love that. And we were talking about this group that my friend Josh and I have started and that we're with. And we spent the whole weekend with these men talking about who they are and their identity. And you can't, your decisions are impacted so much by what you believe about yourself. And so I think that's just so good what you shared, Thomas, because like, if I'm believing I'm a terrible dad, like because
Dang.
of the circumstances I'm in, like I've got to start with a belief about, hey, I can be a good father for my
Yes.
kids. I can, maybe I've made some mistakes and that doesn't have to define you as who you are as a dad. And I love that too, just like a belief in your kid. Like, I believe they can do it. Like, they're my kid. This is my son or my daughter. Like they can do it. Like I don't know. It's so good. And I think that's just such a good starting place. Cause I think a lot of times, as parents, when we make mistakes, it's like, man, I'm not doing a good job. I'm not a great parent. Like no one taught me how to do this. Like there wasn't an instruction manual and I'm
Yeah.
screwing up every day.
It's another storm.
Yeah.
Just, and I like to help, like, use the analogy of if you're watching a football game and I gotta change my quarterbacks that I use, but I'm gonna use Peyton Manning. These are
He's
45.
my favorite, so that's great. I'll take
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So if you're the 25 to 45-year-old, you're still on course there for Peyton Manning. So like, if there's a I think he was like led the league in interceptions in a season, his
Yeah, his
rookie.
rookie year. Yeah.
So, and he still has that record. It's like, I don't remember how many it is, but there's a highlight reel somewhere of all 29 of Peyton Manning's rookie interceptions. And he has like hundreds of interceptions. Same with any quarterback. There's a reel that you could put together that would make any quarterback look terrible. And so what happens when we throw an interception is we have to be mindful of what we're replaying. It's not to ignore that the interception happened, although we did something. Okay, that didn't work. But if we throw an interception in the first quarter on Monday, are we, like, you've seen this happen, especially in college football. Somebody throws an interception and they're like, their confidence is. We saw it with my big Duck fan, and their game against Texas Tech. Texas Tech's quarterback just hit, like, they hadn't had a game in whatever 3 or 4 weeks. He threw an interception early. Like the whole game, he was just rattling off of his mark, right? And so that interception in the beginning of the game affected how he played the rest of the game and how his mindset was, what he's thinking about in his head. So if you throw an interception as a parent, you yell at your kids, you let something slide that shouldn't, whatever it is, you're like, oh man, I really, that didn't work out well. It's not that it's not the interception that kills you then, it's ruminating on it. Like, what's the replay that you have in your mind? Like you said, it's like, oh, I threw an interception, I suck, I'm a terrible dad, like everything, all this stuff's gonna happen. Now, as you know, like from manifestation, it's if you're thinking it and you're speaking it, that's what you're gonna get.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. And the good thing is, like, you can change, you can get better. Like I recognized the other day, like my son was in here with me, and we've got, I got some walkie-talkies someone gave me for Christmas, and they've got the rechargeable batteries in them. So we were taking them apart, putting them in, and I said, okay, hey, take the batteries out of the package and put them in. But they're the rechargeable batteries. And he started taking off the packaging, like, that you don't take off of the rechargeable battery. And I looked over and I went, oh, buddy, that's not what I meant. And like, he immediately burst into tears. And I was like, oh man, he was worried dad was going to make a bigger outburst about this. And one, I was like grateful that I didn't, and like, hey, it's okay. And we talked through it, and it was a good learning moment. He then shocked himself a minute later and got some more education. And it just like helped me see, like, man, like I've lost my one. I was proud of myself that I didn't blow it on him, but two, I also saw like, oh man, like how I've done things before have impacted him. and he's young and he's tender still, and he's just a boy. And it's like, and it was kind of a moment for me of like, man, I'm glad I'm getting better at this. I'm glad I've recognized that my temper has maybe hurt my son in the past, and I'm doing better at responding going forward. So I just share that because for two reasons. One, what you say and how you react can impact your kids, and
Yes.
two, you can get better. Like, you can believe, hey, I can do better at this, and do it.
Dude, and just what you said, Drew, of the mindset of I can get better, I can improve, I can change, I can take ownership. What's really powerful about becoming a dad who leads is then your kids start to pick up on that. They're like, oh, dad's getting better, I can get better. And it just becomes a culture in your home of like everybody's getting better at whatever they do.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. It's not forced. That's just how we operate. You're truly the leader of the team when you're a dad of a home, the dad of a home.
Yeah. No, awesome. Well, share a little bit more about like what you do, Thomas, for men. Like, you've
Yeah,
started a movement, you've got some things you do. Like, how do you, I mean, outside of the book, outside of the course you kind of mentioned, or the
yeah,
workshop that you're going to be doing, talk a little bit about what you do now to help dads and
yeah.
sons.
Well, like the biggest thing that we have each year is our father-son retreat, and that is we bring like 6 families per event because I like to get to know each client that's coming, their story, where they're trying to get, and really make it powerful, impactful, and like this podcast, I'm talking a lot, but on a
No,
retreat, I'm
great.
trying to talk as little as possible because I want the kids and I want the dads to kind of chew through their story and what they're trying to write. So that the father-son rite of passage is really about what is it that the young men and the dads, what is it they want to pursue? What are the obstacles that we're all facing as men as we're pursuing our goals? It doesn't matter what the goal is. So it's a fun container because one, we're doing paintball and whitewater rafting and all fun stuff around it. So we're hiding the vegetables, as somebody said. But also we can address problems like pornography, video games, masculinity really authentically and not as from a space of like, hey, Billy, you've got this issue. But it's like, hey, these are issues that we're all facing. We're putting it on the table. We bring it into the light. It's a safe container. And so it's a lot of fun to be able to see the kids awaken and like have the opportunity to start those conversations that are really important to start with the dad. And we never know, like, hey, this conversation that we had over the summer, their 8th grade, 9th grade year, all of a sudden comes up when they're 11th grade and they're, struggling with something. Then they know that that door is open for them with their dad. So that's this summer. That's our father son program. That's like our paramount event that we like to promote. We also did our first couples leadership retreat last summer or
Cool.
last October. So if you typically folks that come to that have been through something of ours in the past and they're like really wanting to get their wife kind of on the same page. Like, how can you lead with your wife, like in unity with your wife, at a higher level? So that's what that we've got going for October. And then we've also got the podcast, which is free, and that comes out every week. And there's probably going to be some parts of 2026 where we've got podcasts, like multiple podcasts coming out in a week because we just have lots of amazing guests like yourself who are interested in being a part of it and sharing their leadership journey. So the podcast is free. The book is like $15 on Amazon at the time of this recording. And the Leadership Forge, if you're listening to this, is for like, we try to do like as much as we can, just like giving back to the kingdom. And then like we still have to like pay for our, eat and live indoors. So we have the retreat
Right.
and to serve at that higher level.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. No, I think if you're listening and you're wanting to be a better dad, or especially if you feel like you're on the brink with one of your kids, like I think Thomas, you've got a lot of stuff that can help men, help fathers. help husbands. Yeah, love the mission. Yeah, I guess where's the best place, Thomas, for people to find you, to track what you're doing, whether it's the podcast, I'm obviously the book's on Amazon, but like where's the best place for people to just see what you're up to and follow what you're doing?
But I say one thing is go to dadswholead.com and take our free leadership quiz. That'll give you a breakdown of your leadership style, strengths and weaknesses, and like how you can maximize your strength and mitigate any gaps that you have in your leadership style. And that's free. And then I'll get you plugged into our email list. So that's a great way. And then also, like the way that our world's set up now, like if you want to get a hold of me, you're gonna find a way. Like there's there's not a lot of Thomas Spanners out there, or Tom Pfanner. Like, you'll be able to find me, send me a message, and I'll get back to you and would love to connect.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, before we wrap, Thomas, how do you want to be remembered by others?
It's really not even about me being remembered. I feel like I'm a lot more here to just make an impact. I'd be honored to, be seen as someone who followed God's will in his life. And as much as I can, and I'm not perfect, but like leaning into Jesus and trusting him with my decisions and how I manage myself, how I manage my company, how I manage my family. And like hopefully I one day could be an example of like, hey, when you like let go of the worldly and you focus on how you can give back to the kingdom, this is what God can do with you. And so that would be cool to be remembered like that, I would say.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Thomas, thanks again. Thanks for sharing your story. If you're a husband or father and you feel like you can't do it, we're here to say you can. And grateful for our listener and to those listening. Today's the day. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.